When people hear the words government shutdown, it usually feels sudden, like something just broke overnight. But shutdowns don't come out of nowhere. They're the final visible result of a longer process that most of us never get a clear picture of. And that's a problem because when we don't understand the process, it becomes very easy to be misled about who's responsible and what actually went wrong. Today isn't about memorizing budget details. You don't need to understand every line item, every agency, or every dollar. By the end of this episode, you won't know every budget detail, but you will know enough to see a shutdown coming and understand where responsibility really lies. That way, when headlines start flying or blame starts getting tossed around, you'll have a clearer sense of what actually had to happen for a shutdown to occur and what didn't. Let's walk through this calmly, step by step.
From anyone, we stand American together.
When people hear the federal budget, it sounds like one big decision that gets made once a year. In reality, Congress has to pass 12 separate appropriations bills every year. Each one gives the government legal authority to spend money on a specific area. Things like defense, transportation, veterans care, housing, and more. All 12 are meant to be in place by the start of the federal fiscal year, which begins on October 1st. That date isn't a surprise. It's the moment when last year's spending authority expires and new authority must take over. Each of the 12 bills moves independently. If one bill passes, the programs it covers can continue operating. If another bill does not pass, the programs covered by that bill lose legal authority to spend money. That's why shutdowns can be partial. Some parts of the government keep running, while others are forced to stop. Every appropriations bill has to pass the House, pass the Senate, and be signed by the President. All 12 have to clear that process to fully fund the government for the year. In theory, they're supposed to move together. In practice, some move faster, some stall, and some become tangled in negotiations, which is where risk begins to build. When Congress can't finish all 12 bills on time, there is a temporary option. A continuing resolution, or CR, keeps existing funding in place for a short period, days, weeks, or months, to prevent funding from expiring while negotiations continue. But timing matters. A CR has to be passed before October 1st. If the fiscal year begins without either all 12 appropriations bills or a CR in place, spending authority expires for the uncovered programs, and shutdown procedures automatically begin. By the time a shutdown happens, the warning signs have usually been visible for weeks. Deadlines were known, bills were unfinished, temporary fixes were discussed or not. Understanding this structure doesn't mean tracking every vote. It simply means knowing what has to be finished and when for the government to keep operating. When a shutdown happens, the timeline itself isn't a mystery. The fiscal year ends on September 30th. Everyone involved knows that. So when explanations focus only on who disagreed, they often miss the more important question: what actually failed to get finished before the deadline? When blame starts circulating, here are a few concrete things to listen for or notice when they're missing. Shutdowns don't require all appropriations bills to fail. They happen when specific appropriations bills aren't completed and their funding authority expires. A useful explanation will tell you which parts of the government lost funding, not just that Congress failed. Continuing resolutions exist to prevent shutdowns, so when a shutdown occurs, pay attention to how the CR is described. Was it passed? Was it delayed? Did negotiations stall before it could be approved? Talking about a CR isn't the same thing as passing one. and explanations often blur that difference. As September 30th gets closer, pressure increases. Sometimes negotiations narrow, sometimes positions harden, sometimes talks stall completely. Listening for whether movement increased or stalled helps explain how a shutdown became unavoidable, even though the deadline was known all along. A shutdown doesn't happen because the system suddenly breaks. It happens because required funding steps aren't completed before the deadline arrives. Understanding that doesn't tell you who to blame, but it does help you understand how responsibility actually formed, regardless of how it's later described. When shutdown explanations skip over which bills were left unresolved, how the CR process actually unfolded, or how negotiations changed as the deadline neared, they turn a predictable process into a simplified story. Knowing what to listen for helps you stay oriented, especially when emotions are high and explanations get compressed. Government shutdowns don't happen randomly. They follow a process with known steps and known deadlines. And honestly, most of us were never taught that clearly. So when the headlines start flying, it can feel like chaos, even when the structure is actually predictable. You don't need to memorize budget details. You don't need to track every negotiation or every vote. What matters is understanding the structure well enough to recognize when an explanation lines up with how funding actually works, when key steps are being left out of the story you're hearing, and when responsibility is being simplified or shifted. That's how you stay grounded in what actually happened. Hard to admit, right? Me too. But once you understand the structure, the noise quiets down and you can think more clearly. Truth check. When shutdown explanations start circulating, what catches your attention? Is it who's arguing, or what didn't get finished before the deadline and how that was being handled? Share what you tend to notice. Next time shutdown talk starts trending, do one quick process check. Ask, which appropriations bills were unfinished, and was there a continuing resolution in place before October 1st? Even if you don't chase every detail, that one question can keep you oriented. And just so you know, this is completely optional, no assignments here. If you ever want to look things up for yourself, especially how appropriations bills are currently moving through Congress, I do have a Civic how-to section on my website under Toolkit and Resources. You don't need it for this episode, it's just there if or when you want it. This space isn't about forcing people to agree, it's about pausing, noticing what drives our reactions, and coming to the conversation with openness, self-awareness, and a willingness to really listen together. I welcome different views, but I expect respect. Disagree, great, explain why. See it differently, share your angle. Here, we use our differences as strengths, not weapons. And if you'd like a little extra help shaping your reply, I've linked my 3 Ps in Action comment edition in the description. It's the same process I use myself to pause, pinpoint truth, and proceed with purposeful forethought. Don't worry about reading all this here. The full list of sources is in the description and on my site, american-together.com. And in another episode, we're going to shift from how this works to what you can actually do when funding gets shaky or when a shutdown is being threatened. Because understanding the process is the first step. Knowing how to respond comes next. If this resonated with you, hit the thumbs up, share it with a friend, and join the conversation in the comments. Together, we're not just watching, we're building something. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Remember, pause, pinpoint truth, proceed with purposeful forethought. Join the conversation. See you next time.